or God has been tugging on your heart to stop having sex. And if you're looking for a sign to stop having sex, stop having sex. Oh my gosh. Jesus, you're gonna have to give me this one too, because I don't know when I'm gonna post this really, but okay. I am coming up now on 3 years. Am I doing the math correct? Yeah, 3 years. I'm coming up on 3 years of my abstinence journey. And this video is about when God told me to stop having sex. Just keep me, Lord, keep me, Lord. The purpose of this video is to encourage anybody that might be in this current season, or God has been tugging on your heart to stop having sex. And if you're looking for a sign to stop having sex, stop having sex. So let's get into it. In 2021, leading up to that, I was having premarital sex. While I wasn't necessarily like in these streets, I stayed in a relationship. Shortly after my dad had passed away, I had no desire of being alone. I didn't want to process my feelings and emotions because it's just, why would I do that? So I found myself oftentimes in relationships to kind of, almost as a coping mechanism. No, it was a coping mechanism for me at the time. Just so that I just didn't want to be alone. And so in being in those relationships that were not necessarily rooted in Jesus, I was having sex. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be real. I was having sex, but the time came around where in the most recent relationship I was in, it was in February. I won't forget this. And I was living with the man. It was my boyfriend at the time, and I was living with this man. And he was sleeping right next to me, and I heard the Lord say, stop having sex. I heard him say it very clear because I knew it wasn't my thoughts. And to give you some background, I was processing a lot of sexual trauma. It took me a long time to kind of get to a point where I was okay with physical touch to an extent. And so in my relationship, we kind of had issues with me wanting to be touched and things of that nature. But at the time that God told me to stop having sex, I was just kind of getting warmed up to the idea of being like, yeah, like Stella was getting her groove back. You know what I'm saying? Like I was ready to get back in there. Like let's get it. And right as that was happening, that's when God had told me stop having sex. So I heard that and I said, huh? He said, stop having sex. It got to a point where I finally said, all right, like God, if this is you, if this is really you, give me some confirmations, give me some signs. And shortly after, I think it was actually that day, I saw a bunch of videos on my For You page on YouTube. And one of them was a couple who did an interview about why they waited until marriage to have sex. And then there was several other confirmations that led up to the decision. But I still wasn't necessarily like sold on the idea because like, if I'm going to stop having sex until marriage, like how long is it going to take for me to get married? Man I'm with are you going to tell him the same thing? Because if we really going to do this, like you're going to have to tell both of us. I know I'm going to hold up my end, but him, you guys like talk to him about that. Cause at the end of the day, like I'm good here. It takes two to have sex. About a month later, we ended up breaking up. I was heated and now it's like, the real test begins. Because what I used to do, and again, I pray that this encourages somebody. What I used to do was when I got out of a relationship, I would get immediately back into another one. And the thing is like when you're getting into worldly relationships, they're expecting sex. They'll say, oh, I'll wait for you. Sex is not a big thing to me, but they're lying. And so instead of going into another relationship, because I knew that I had given God my yes to not having sex, now the real test began. So we break up. Not only did we break up, I didn't have no man or anybody to self-soothe me or help ease the pain of this breakup. This is right around the time where my grandmother passes away. This is also around the time where My taste for weed is slowly dying out. And it's just everything's happening all at once. And I had no devices. To have nothing, like nada, nothing, it hit a little different. So I had no choice but to like really sit in my feelings and my emotions. Around this time, I turned to New Age. I was deceived by New Age as a means for coping and for peace. I'll talk a little bit about that in another video. That opened up some doors and some portals I wasn't ready for. Refrigerator, my ice maker. But there is some things that I had to work through as effects of that. So becoming newly saved, giving God my yes to abstinence, and doing things God's way. That was kind of my first introduction into surrendering to God. So I surrendered my taste for weed, alcohol, sex, and I slowly started to see the transformations that was going on in my life. There was a point when I was addicted to tarot, where I heard the Lord say, you should stop watching that. And I could discern that it was the same voice that told me to stop having sex. I was able to discern this is the same voice. And the transformations that took place after that were really they were literally life-changing. I went from doom and gloom and depression and anxiety to no longer having to take pills and dealing with it. Now coming up on 3 years. I pray that this video encourages whomever this is for. If God is telling you and nudging on your heart to stop having premarital sex, do it. It's the best thing that you could ever do. One of the best things you could ever do aside from giving your life to the Lord. But also, there's a very important detail that I forgot to mention. In me asking my confirmation for when God told me to stop having sex, when I was asking for confirmations, another confirmation that he gave me was, I don't remember if it was that night that he had told me to stop having sex or weeks later or a month later, but I came across an ad from a group called the Sexless Tribe. I was like, this is such a weird name. Like, who, like, you're celebrating not having sex? I'm like, let me just see. And the founder of this tribe, her name was Shakia too. And I'm like, all right, like, if this isn't a big, like, I'm calling you to abstinence, I don't know what is. So shout out to Shakia Seabrook. If you feel that God is tugging on you to be abstinent, and be around like-minded Christians who are abstinent as well, I suggest that you look into the Sexless Tribe with Shakia Seabrook. We've had meetups. I don't know why I'm losing my words today. It's okay. But we've had meetups, and I've established connections with people who are amazing. And there's people that they would meet on these apps, they would get married. Like, these are kingdom marriages that are dropping quick. They're getting married fast. But if God is tugging on your heart, calling you to abstinence, you can do it. Pray for the grace to continue to move how God wants you to move, and just, you got this. So I think that's all I want to say before I leak out all my business and embarrass myself on these internets. So, but that's all I have. I pray that y'all are blessed. I pray that God blesses you exceedingly and abundantly, more than you can ask, think, or imagine. And see y'all later.